So that got top of the stack against, what is that called? Surprised by Oxford, Happy End, and Writing Kim. And I don't know what James is going to talk about afterwards, but...
I'm showing it on camera.
Oh, Songs of the Doukhobors.
Doukhobors, the spirit wrestlers.
Okay.
It's literally what their name means in Russian. Well, there's an insect there.
Oh,
I
interesting.
didn't squash him with her.
Yeah, I'm always impressed with the insects in
This
November.
time of year. Yeah, it's getting on in November.
Real troopers.
Yeah.
Anyway, moonlighting. This was interesting because James was, while it was on, I hadn't noticed a date at the end of the episodes or anything like that. And James said, "How old were you when you watched that?" And he was like, "About 10." And I said, "Yeah, 9 or 10, I think." And then this is volume 2 of the seasons 1 and 2. So this is seasons 2 basically in this one. And so it's at the end of the very last episode, which would have aired in spring. It said 1986. And so I would have been 10 when that, because my birthday's in the summer. And so I would have been watching this 9 and 10.
And you remembered.
And I'd remembered
at least
somehow.
one of these.
Yeah,
shows.
and well, you'd remembered too how old I would have been and when this was on and all that sort of thing.
That's amazing because it's amazing how few shows I've actually watched.
I know, but
Brady Bunch, huge in the
so
70s.
Worth it.
Never watched a show. I don't think I even watched part of one.
Yeah.
And Friends, I've never watched a complete show, I don't think. Did I watch one? Did you get me to watch one?
Yeah, it's amazing how big that show was, but this was a way better show. And it's interesting because I was one of those kids that I really didn't have friends. I had, other kids would invite me over after they were done eating dinner so that I could help them wash the dishes and stuff like that, and then I would go back home, so that's the kind of friends I had for the most part. And basically I just I liked hanging around with my mom, so my mom was my friend. So you might think, watching Moonlighting at age 9 and 10, that seems a little, there would have been a lot of the jokes that Bruce Willis was making about sex and stuff. That would have just went over my head. I wouldn't have known what that was about at all. But yeah, that's the way kids are. But I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching Moonlighting with my mom, or even without her. And I remembered there was one episode came on and I was just thrilled because I remembered it. Because I remembered listening to Papa Was a Rolling Stone, and that was the first time I'd ever heard that song, and I was just blown away. I was like, this is the best song ever. And
well, I think it's the best Temptation song.
It's a great song. So anyway, when I heard that, I was thrilled, and that was the first time I'd ever heard that song, and so it was very memorable for me, and it was memorable watching the episode again. So yeah, I hadn't watched this since I was very young, so it's been a long time.
Lots of decades.
Since I've watched this. And yeah, I love the humor. My mom always says that she hates comedy. And
she'd watch that with you though, right?
Yeah, she liked this. And this is, often people will think, oh, it's a detective show. Well, really it's a comedy first and a detective show second.
Mm-hmm.
So it is both, but it's good comedy. There's good writing in this. And
I had a guy who taught me drama at university. He's quite a good guy. He's dead now. He died of cancer in the tongue too. But I took comedy, and he loved comedy. Took Shakespeare from him, a variety of different things. But his formula was, and there might be something to it, tragedy oftentimes begins with a marriage and ends with a death. And a comedy often begins with a death and ends with a marriage.
Yeah, it begins with a death.
Yeah, begins with a death. I say ends with a death, but it begins with a death. And so here, presumably most of the things are murders.
Oh, I suppose, and you have the romance, yeah.
But it doesn't ever end up. That's what keeps you tuning
Yeah,
in
well,
for
that's
next
what
week.
keeps you,
Never ends
it
up in a
keeps you
marriage.
tuning in, because you want to see them together, but in a way you really don't too, because
It'd be like a major league car crash.
yeah. If you're old enough to know better, you don't really want to see them together. You know that's not a good idea. But I mean, there are times where, like, there's one kiss scene that's a really great kiss scene, right? And then neither one of them will admit that that they were the ones responsible for it, and so they're like, well, then it never happened, you know? And so, like, okay, we can go along with that as the audience, whatever. So, yeah, it's a great time. So,
I mean, those James Garner ones, Rockford Files or whatever.
yeah,
It's a comedy too. He's a comic actor.
yeah.
I presume that was murder pretty well every time, doesn't it? Anyway, criminal kind of activity, but it's a comedy.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, Moonlighting's awesome. It really is. So if you haven't watched Moonlighting yet, if you're a younger person and whatever, and I guess you could be my age and maybe never watched it if your best friend wasn't your mom when you were a kid. So anyway, you might want to pick it up from the library. It's definitely worth going through. It's worth going through, obviously, more than this, because these were bottom of the stack compared to that, right? But Moonlighting, it's
one of the all-time classics.
It is. So how can you lose with Sybil Shepherd and Bruce Willis? You can't. They really worked well together.
Well, they're movie quality actors.
Yeah,
this
they're
is,
both
of course,
good
back
actors,
when
and
the
they
movies were better than TV.
Yes.
Nowadays, no.
Yeah. Anyway, Surprised by Oxford. I was surprised by this movie because it's a true story. So it's
Is it about the
it's a
university?
romance. Well, it is. They show Oxford, and I guess, I mean, I was surprised learning about that it's a whole bunch of different buildings and stuff like that.
Well,
They showed some of them.
Big universities are that way.
Yeah,
When you go to University of Toronto, you can't tell where Toronto ends. It's right in the middle of Toronto, and the university begins all the way around it.
My eye keeps watering.
We're used to once having a campus, you know.
Yeah.
It's a little bit that way with the University of Alberta, though.
Yeah.
Like you went to the library, right? Was that the Rutherford Library we got the music out from?
I don't think so. I think I went to the main. No, I went to the main public library.
No, the public
That's
library.
right.
Anyway, we were right around the university, like the hospital. The main hospital is on one side of it.
I know.
East side of it, and
I
then
went
we were on the south
in the
side.
campus and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
exactly. I couldn't tell you where it begins
But
and
no,
ends.
where I kept going every time I'd leave, I kept going to the public. I'd get this, well, what do you call it there? It's not the C train there. It's something else. Subway.
I used to
I'm
know.
not sure.
Forgot.
I don't know what they call it. Because it's sometimes above the ground and sometimes below it, so I'm not really sure.
Yeah, well, LRT is what they tend to
I
call things like
suppose.
that, light rail transports.
So, anyway, this movie really isn't bad. It's a little bit slow, but it's,
Well, I bet you Oxford's that.
Yeah.
Really?
Anyway, happy end. And both of these are lesbian romance sort of films a bit. And Anyway, neither one of them are really worth watching. This one is Canadian. It got bottom of the stack, which that's unfortunate because I actually really like Canadian shows a lot of the time. There was some good scenery in this. I mean, it's set around Vancouver and stuff like that, so that's pretty nice.
That's one thing Canada has an overplus of, actually. Good scenery, and of course there's a lot of boring.
And so really we should have some of the best movies in the world to watch because we have so much beautiful scenery to put into the movies. And that's a big part of movies, is having a beautiful backdrop, if you ask me.
You were kind of liking that the best about
Magnum PI. It made it worth watching, sure.
Because the rest of it,
a lot of it wasn't worth watching.
By the sounds of it.
But the scenery, that really made it. You see Hawaii, wow, so nice. Especially when it's, getting close to winter, flirting with it, and you're like, oh dear.
When you get
today's
to more
nice weather day.
I don't know if it's exactly in the tropics, but closer to the tropics, it's amazing how blue the water looks.
So anyway, this one is subtitle. You have to read subtitles for this one. So I don't know where it was. They speak German, but I don't know where they are exactly.
In Germany.
Well, presumably. But there's some beautiful beach scenery and stuff like that. So
That's
I don't
weird.
know. But maybe
they have a fair amount of beach in Germany.
Maybe they have a lot of nice lake beaches. I don't know.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Down in the south. You didn't see any mountains around.
So you get to see beach scenery in both of these movies, which that's a plus. But
there's the Starnberger See, which is mentioned in The Wasteland.
Yeah.
But they don't have a lot of them.
I put it above this one because it had a little bit more of a. You get the idea that the one woman is really, maybe she thinks dignity is more important than love, and you get the sense that maybe she feels that way because she doesn't allow herself to feel love. So that's kind of an interesting idea in the film. So love's the most important thing, of course. So anyway,
sure doesn't look like Switzerland.
Writing Kim. This is a story about a writer who she's not a lesbian or anything, but she finds this one woman intriguing, and she's her muse, and so it's a story about that. So that's all I have to talk about. I guess James is going to tell you all about Doukhobors now. So.
Well, not all. It could be Switzerland, maybe.
Sure.
I can see something that looks like low mountains. Generally, Switzerland is high mountains.
So you have 15 minutes. Enjoy. Wow, you managed to get that all down before.
Well, in 15 minutes or so.
That's incredible.
Well, it's tasty. That's what it is. Maybe incredibly tasty. But we've talked before about who produces it. It comes out of Medicine Hat, folks. Radcliffe Bakery. I don't think it comes out of. I think Radcliffe is considered a separate community from Medicine Hat, but it's basically right next door. It used to be a separate stop for the Greyhound bus when it was coming through on Highway number 1. That's called the Trans-Canada Route. Here in Canada, there are a few places where the Trans-Canada isn't number 1, but generally number 1 highway. Trans-Canada Highway. It's kind of world famed. I think Bob Geldof, back when he was a young pup, before he became famous, decided to go through it. The Trans-Canada route. He maybe pulled the plug. He was heading west in Calgary. He talked as though Calgary was the sphincter of the world, the nether sphincter of the world. I didn't have much good to say about Calgary. Of course, Calgary might not have much good to say about Bob Geldof. I don't think he was that special back then. This is before he became famous or infamous or whatever. And just generally hasn't performed to snuff, I'd say. Not a bad guy, really. Whatever. Maybe a little bit cruel to Michael Hutchins. Committed suicide after Bob Geldof stole his wife, or partner, Paula Yates, I think is her name. Hopefully she's still alive. Hopefully Bob Geldof is still alive. Anyway, here we've got it. I'll review this title for you. Songs of the Duke of Bor. So Duke in Russian means something like soul or spirit. Bor, the Slavic title Baron, comes, I suspect, from the root. Oftentimes in the Slavic languages, O and A number change. Linguistics in general, O's and A's change, but there is a particular pattern in the Slavic languages. Russian, for example, there's depends on, I can't remember which one it is. You get Old Church Slavonic, and then you get Russian. And one is Gorod, G-O-R-O-D, and then Grad, Novgorod. I think that means new city or town, settlement. And then you got Stalingrad, Gorod, Grad, and it's weird how they've got two O's, one of them getting scrunched out in Gorod, and the second one getting changed, the second O getting changed to an A. Weird. Learning a little bit of linguistics here, folks. You stick with me, you might go places. Look where I am. Yeah, exactly right. If this house was put on the market at the same time as my house, the two houses would be right at the bottom. The market. No, you stick with me, you go places. Anyway, Songs of the Duke of Bor is put out by the National Museums, plural, of Canada. And this is a folklore series. And this is number 7 from the folklore series. So they see songs as being, this type as being folklore. It was collected, the stuff, the songs of the Duke of Bor, were collected and edited by Kenneth Peacock is his name. I know of another person with that name who just might be into philosophy, actually. Don't think it's the same guy. Anyway, when was this published? I'm guessing 1970. Let's see. 1970. I remember. Maybe it's just a lucky guess. But I actually remember. 1970. And it's got a history, kind of like a pocket history, even though it isn't a pocket book. More like a coffee table book, but it's not made for coffee tables. Why? It doesn't have big picture on the front and color and stuff like that. It has some interesting pictures in the middle, but it has a history of the Duke of Bor, and with some interesting pictures and stuff like that. So it's maintained in this essay, as it were, thumbnail sketch, even though it's a large thumbnail, that Duke of Bor, the Duke of Bor history, the beginnings of it, maybe not before it was called, before they were called the Duke of Bor. And incidentally, I mean spirit wrestler, or fighter or whatever, that was originally a term of abuse, but it was adopted by the Duke of Bor themselves. They seem to like it okay, or that's what's contained here. And so it started in the 15th century, maybe. It goes back a long way. So that'd be the 1400s. It didn't specify, as I recall, where in the 15th century those beginnings were. But it's quite enlightening. It goes all the way down to 1898, 99, when they decided they'd better get out of Russia. While the getting was good, they were experiencing a lot of persecution. Holy smokes. It's lucky they didn't wait around 20 years. They would have really got hammered the way the Mennonites did in Russia and other Germanic minorities in Russia. Not all Germans that were in Russia were Mennonites. We hear about the Mennonites here in Canada, or at least where we are in Canada, because there's fairly substantial settlements scattered around the prairie provinces around Swift Current, south of Swift Current in Saskatchewan. I believe it's south of Prince Albert, maybe between Prince Albert and Saskatoon, and then here around Lethbridge, and I'm told there's quite a few in Abbotsford, BC, but Abbotsford, BC, it'd be hard to lead the agricultural lifestyle. It's kind of been traditional with the Mennonites there. It's become a large city. One Sikh fellow, not Sikh, S-I-K-H. I'm not making a pun, that's kind of the way Sikhs say their name. Anyway, he was saying, wow, we kind of control Abbotsford now. It's kind of our city. Okay. Really the only people who have any right to that land, not Mennonites, not Sikhs or Sikhs. They're not British people, even though it's in British Columbia. It's indigenous people, and in the lower mainland of BC, where Abbotsford is located, there still are there's still a scattering of reserves, which are somewhat like the reservations in the United States. They're little enclaves surrounded by these reserves. The lower mainland are surrounded by, it looks in many cases like severe urban development. Kind of sad. What can you say? Anyway, what you've got here, so then there's talk about, after the history, there's some notes on music, and on psalms, category psalms, and is there another text, notes on the music. So it comes with text. That's the whole idea of the songs, right? You get music with words. The singing of psalms beautifies our souls. That's, of course, the English translation. And so it gives the music here, right there, written up. Looks to be fairly simple sort of stuff. It's not exactly something that might have been put out by Gustav Mahler a little over 100 years ago, with a cast of thousands in the symphony orchestra. Not thousands, but I think Mahler oftentimes would use an orchestra that would be over 100 strong. Let us gather, brothers. So again, another, it gives the tunes, and oh yeah, it's here. I neglected to bring my glasses up. It does have the lyrics in here. It's just they're hard to see and stuff like that. It looks as though there's something like melisma here. I see a syllable here and a syllable there, yeah, but several notes in between. Melisma is when one syllable of lyric will have several notes to it. So, oh, say, can you see? The O has about the simplest melisma you can get, which is just two notes. But you'll get something like Gregorian chant, where note after note will be attached to one particular syllable of lyric. So then, it's a little bit hard sometimes to follow the lyrics when they're written, you know, it looks as though this is 4-part harmony. We got two female parts and two male parts below the lyric. But here they've printed the lyrics. And in the original Russian. Isn't that awesome? And then on the facing page, something like a translation. And as I recall, they didn't bother with trying to rhyme. If you're going to rhyme on something like song lyrics, translation of song lyrics, give a prose translation as well. Going to take up more space, but like people really want to know what is being said or sung in the original. They're not terribly. Usually people who translate using taking something that's in verse or song form and putting it into verse or song form. They usually don't have the chops to be in their own language to be churning out verse or even more of a challenge song lyrics. Anyway, I've found it interesting going through the Russian text, the original Russian, and stuff like that. I actually have taken Russian at university, along with approximately 24 other languages, and that's only with very moderate creative account. Okay, so in some cases, of course, it's offered officially by the university. In some cases, tutored by professors at university. When I mean tutored, it'd be only me, and it wouldn't be a class. I wouldn't be getting credit, like that. But and in all those cases, tutored for free. And then I've taken some courses that were not for credit, but being offered by the university. Took Arabic that way. Mayan, you could take Mayan at the University of Leipzig. Pretty good, eh? And then, I've just made arrangements with a few professors who have, where I'd say, go to them and say, how about if, are you willing to kind of, in the future, test me on my knowledge of this, that, and the other languages is one of your specialties, and I'll teach myself. And it might just involve an hour or something like that. And it's amazing how cooperative every professor that I've approached in that fashion have been. Why? Well, it's kind of, I get good marks in language classes. They know I'm not going to mess them around. I haven't had a history of messing around. Beautiful. So, that having been said, they don't owe anything like that to me. I really appreciate the cooperation. So in case any of you folks I've approached are listening in, thank you. But yeah, there are some languages that you wouldn't be able to get at any university really, in terms of courses at all. Anyway, yeah, it is pretty good. It's got some interesting pictures. You know, like when I was a kid, I was always thinking of the Freedomites when I heard about the Duke of War's, the Freedomites, some of them.